Hello and welcome. This is Rashim, the Be More Catalyst of Be More LLC, helping you to do more, serve more, and be more. Today we have had a guest speaker, Linda Murray, who was going to tell us about fiscal sponsorship and fiscal relationships and how to leverage those to make profitable relationships. Unfortunately, the system got a little bit mixed up on her end with her computer system, didn't quite agree with what we were trying to do here. So it ended up not allowing us to proceed. However, what we are going to do is I've decided to go ahead and reschedule it with her. I'm also probably, for the duration of the rest of them, probably going to pre-record the next lessons and then distribute them that way, because we're seeming to have a lot of different challenges around using this particular platform, and I want to make sure that you get all the information and insight around things that you need. What we will do today is I will definitely take the time to go over a lesson and give you a few pointers on nonprofit development, as well as answer any questions that anyone may have, some of your burning questions about nonprofit development. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give everyone a chance to get a piece of paper and a pen and get some water and put it by your side. And I'm going to pull up the chat section so that as people ask questions, I could be able to address those while we are also while we are also live. So let's see. Again, go ahead and grab a sheet of paper, grab a pen so that you can take some notes. You have a question, go ahead and post it. You can post it here if you want. You can post it to Facebook. I'll probably see it there as well. And I am going to give you some tips on how to develop your nonprofit, as well as answer a few questions that you might have about nonprofit development. What I want to do is actually go over some frequently asked questions around nonprofit development before we get too deep into anything else, because there's a lot of rumors, I would say, around nonprofit development, around what it is and what it is not. What is the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit is one of the biggest questions that I get asked. What I'm going to do today is kind of just go over the 7 steps to starting a nonprofit. So step number 1, I want to demystify the paperwork process in 7 steps, really. So establishing a nonprofit, there's an internal document process and there's also an external document process. And here's what I mean by that. There's paperwork and there's information that you need within your organization to be able to function operationally. And there's also paperwork that you need to be able to produce and give to the governmental bodies that be, right? And there's some instances where that type of paperwork ends up overlapping. Some of the challenges occur typically when we seek the external paperwork that we need. You know, sometimes people come and they just want to file the paperwork. They just want to start the process. They just want to get moving. They just want to get their 501c3. They haven't really fully developed their vision. They really haven't fully developed their mission. They haven't really fully developed their programming, or how is this going to be sustainable? A lot of people come and they just like, can you just file the paper? Can you just help me to file the paperwork? And that's what they tend to want. And that's kind of like the external paperwork process, right? This is what is to be done after really the establishment of the foundation. And the foundation is in establishing what is your clear vision, what is your clear mission. So let's get into that. So what is the difference between a vision and a mission? Sometimes people ask me. So think of the vision as the end result. You're speaking to the end result. What will be the transformation that happens for participants in your program, for participants in your workshop, or whatever the services are that you provide. Your vision speaks to the end results that you see for that organization. Now, the mission just tells a little bit more, but it also includes some aspects of the vision. What it includes in that is, it includes a little bit about how you're going to do that, right? How are you going to fulfill that mission? And I like to give people what I call the 3 C's of a money-making mission. And that is that your mission statement, if you don't have a sheet of paper, go ahead and get one now to write this down. Your mission statement should be clear, it should be concise, and it should be compelling. All right, so let's go with clarity first, right? So when I read your mission statement, I should know exactly who you serve and some of how you serve them. Because if I don't know that, if your mission statement is to make the world a better place, that is not really a mission statement, right? How are you making the world a better place? Who are you making the world a better place for? What is your mechanism for creating this better place environment? So creating some clarity. Now, what a person might want to add to that is making the world a better place one plate at a time. That gives us a little bit more insight into what that looks like, right? So I may have the idea that that is something for homeless, or something for feeding, or something for helping people in that regard. But when I hear a mission statement, I really need to know who it is that you serve and exactly how it is that you serve them. And that's on that clarity piece. Concise. Mission statements should not be a paragraph long. They should be 3, max 5 pages. 5 pages. Lord have mercy, not 5 pages. They should be 3, max 5 sentences long when you're doing a mission statement. And I really wouldn't even do 5. But in that, I want it to be really concise, right? A limited amount of word usage to get to the point of who you serve and how you serve them. Concise also means that you're not trying to be all things to all people. You are not trying to save the dolphins, help people in the rainforest, cure homelessness, find a cure for AIDS, and workforce development, right? That is not a concise mission statement at all. So if I were developing, I'm going to use as an example, if I were developing a youth development program, then I need to speak to that, and I need to say how I'm going to help you. So let's say if I was serving young aspiring scientists, one science project at a time. Right? Even that is still, that still could use some work, but it's still, I'm working with young scientists, and I'm working with young people, and I'm helping them through something that's STEM related. So that's a little bit more concise. And again, your mission statement is probably going to be something that you're going to massage. If you don't have it right now and you can't think of it off the top of your head, don't worry about it. You're going to have plenty of time to massage it. Just think about making sure it has that first C where it's clear, and that second C where it's concise. You're not trying to be all things to all people. What tends to happen with a lot of nonprofits is mission creep. And one of the reasons that mission creep happens and the mission tends to expand is because we see that young scientist may come to the program and maybe he can't concentrate because he's hungry, right? So then the organization may think, oh, he can't concentrate because he's hungry. Maybe I should provide food, or not just provide food, but maybe we should have a after school lunch component to our organization, right? So then they're doing that. And then maybe they have realized that that student is having trouble paying attention because their parents aren't that involved. So then the mission starts to get a little bit bigger. So I'm going from helping young scientists to helping young scientists providing lunch, and then I'm also doing some parental courses. So the mission tends to creep like that because we have really big hearts, one, and we always we like to take on a holistic approach The challenge with that approach is we end up trying to be all things to all people. And for people who are funders and donors and volunteers and people who may want to give to the cause that you care about, it looks like you are either naive and you're not really sure about how this whole thing works, or you're really just trying to pull one over their eyes, so to speak, right? So we have to stick with that clear, that concise, and then the third C is compelling. That C speaks to the outcome. So after they sign up, the youth, the young scientists, after they sign up for your program, what is the end result? Are they enrolling in college? Do they have a better future? Do they have an increased quality of life? So with your mission statement, you want it to be clear, concise, and compelling. Why is that so important? It's so important because confused people don't make transactions. If the first time I read your mission statement, I don't understand it, I'm not engaged. But that's the first and one of the most important and key cornerstones of how you build later on, because it is essentially your marketing statement. Everything else that you do is going to pull from that. Another challenge that I see nonprofits having around their mission statement, they get into mission creep also because there's funding for certain things and their organization may not serve that particular purpose at this particular time, but because there's dollars attached to it, they massage their mission to focus on it. So let's say if I have that youth development scientist organization established, and then there's a program over here that's a sports program for people who fit my student demographic in terms of age and maybe even gender or locale, but they're not necessarily scientists. So then what we do is some organizations might go to the students and say, hey, would you like to also play sports? Now, one of the reasons they do that is not because nonprofits are conniving or trying to be evil. It's just that sometimes when we put the money before the mission, it ends up having us to lose sight, and then we get mission creep. And so now our science program that we developed to create young scientists is now an athletic program, right? Or science, or now we do science and athletics. So then that program is over, and then that grant, I should say, is over. So then now you're switching back over to the science portion because you don't have the funds to support that. So all of these things happen when our mission statements aren't clear, concise, and compelling. And you want to try to avoid mission creep as much as possible. So that's just the front part of it. Now, I haven't even actually gotten to the 7 steps of starting a nonprofit. Let's just say that's 8, there'll be 8 steps. So the one is developing a money-making mission statement that is clear, concise, and compelling, right? So the second one is establishing rules of conduct and authority. So this is kind of internal/external information that you're going to need to establish for your nonprofit. And establishing rules of conduct and authority, all that means is that you need to formally establish bylaws, right? You're going to set up how things are going to be done, who's going to be doing it, and that sort of thing. Now, it varies depending upon state in terms of whether or not they require bylaws, but whether or not your state require bylaws, your organization should absolutely positively have bylaws, because if it doesn't, it's not really the organized part of organization. It's just a group of people, really, and you want to definitely make sure that you have organization. The IRS does not require a copy of this in your tax-exempt application, and some states require it and some states don't. Regardless, this is one of those internal documents that you want to absolutely establish. So first step, develop your vision and your mission statement that's money-making, that's clear, concise, and compelling. I actually skipped a step. The actual step after you develop your money-making mission statement, or really in conjunction with that, is do not try to do this alone. This is one of the biggest challenges sometimes of very passionate people who have the desire to go out and do something on their own. They end up trying to do it alone. And one of my favorite quotes is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Starting a nonprofit is not a one-person job, period, point blank. Legally, it's not. Emotionally, it's not. Physically, it's not. It's just not. It's just not possible to do it and be successful. You just can't. Now, there's some entities where you can. So if you're comparing your interests or your drive or your setup to your friend who's an entrepreneur, who's a solopreneur, that's totally possible. A person could be in a business and be a sole proprietorship. It could be an LLC, all of that. It is absolutely positively not possible to do it when you are establishing a nonprofit organization. So do not do it alone. Establish a team. Now, this team is more than likely going to be your board on the initial setup. I typically tell my clients that I know nonprofit boards, the grassroots types, usually go through 3 phases. The first phase I refer to as friends, families, and fools. And here's why. A lot of times, this is another mistake that some of the most purpose-driven, big-hearted nonprofits do. They want to get that. They have the dream, they have the mission, they have the desire, and they feel like all I need is the paperwork. If I could just get the paperwork together, then I have everything I need. And so then what they'll do is they'll start going to recruit their friends, right? Your cousin, your best friend, your coworker, whoever you can grab to get this paperwork process. These are some of the mistakes that organizations think of why nonprofits are not sustainable. This is why so many nonprofits have their grand opening and their grand closing in the same year. They go and they file the paperwork status, and the paperwork status, believe it or not, is the easiest part of establishing a nonprofit. It is the more easier part, because after the paperwork, you have to find out, how are you going to make this sustainable? Right? How am I going to develop programming? Who's going to do what? So when you develop your board, you have to think about those sort of things. And if you are reaching to grab people in the process of just filing your paperwork, if you're grabbing friends, family, and fools, or friends, family, and whoever you can find, then that's a surefire way that you're starting off the wrong way. And those people probably should not be on your team. You need strong individuals on your team. And what good leaders do, there's a difference too, I've noticed in the way that what I consider good leaders, how they recruit talent and hire talent, and people who are not effective leaders recruit and hire talent. So one of the things that I see leaders do is they hire weaker versions of who they are. Right? This person has this in common with me, but they can't challenge my authority, or they feel like they have something over that person, some type of mechanism of control. So they'll bring that person on board, so long as that person is like them enough and someone that they view as weaker. Now, here's what the smart leaders do. Smart leaders don't hire weaker versions of themselves. They hire stronger versions of who they are not, right? I am not an accountant, so I want somebody who's an accountant on my team. I am not, there's certain aspects of my personality, of my being, of my leadership style that I know work. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to hire another me that I can dominate. I'm not going to hire another Rasheen, because I got being me. What I need is stronger versions of characteristics and aspects that this organization is going to need that I don't currently have. And leaders don't tend to do that enough. So that's another step. Establish a team, get the right people on board, seek out members to join your board, and look for those who have demonstrated interest and are in alignment with your organizational mission. That is very important, because when you have friends, families, and whoever you can find, when it comes time to do the work, they weren't interested in the first place. You drag them kicking and screaming. And I have a little bit more information where I can go deeper on how do you find those people. But I won't go into that at this time. So the point that I had got to earlier, it was about establishing the rules of conduct and authority. To do this, after you've gotten your vision and your mission, and it's clear, concise, and compelling, and you have developed your team, then you establish your bylaws. Now, notice in all of that, we still haven't gotten to the paperwork yet. There's no paperwork. There's no 501c3. We're not filing anything yet because we're still working on building a foundation. What organizations tend to do is get the paperwork and they don't have any of this laid out. And so they have their grand opening and their grand closing in the same year, right? Next step. The next step now, here is where we start to get a little bit even more formal. Now you're incorporating your organization to the establishment through the establishment of articles of incorporation, right? Now we're getting into even more paperwork. And through this process, because you've established a mission and you have established a team, and then from that team, you have established who's going to do what and how it's going to be done, you are giving yourself a really good and solid foundation to make that paperwork process that you fill out easier, because you've already done the front end work to kind of fill this in. So now we're getting into some of the external paperwork, and also as you're going through those processes, you're not doing it alone. It's more than just you at the table. When you establish your nonprofit, the only people who are at the table are you and a lawyer that's helping you fill it out. That is a surefire sign that it's not going to sustain itself. This should be a team. This is a very much, I can't emphasize enough how important collaboration is in this process, right? So the next step is to get a social security number for the organization, also known as the federal employee identification number. You'll need to establish this in order to have a bank account. So you need that in order to establish a bank account. You need it for a whole bunch of other things, but I put in the bank account piece because I feel like it's very important. When people first go out and establish their nonprofit organizations, a lot of time they're doing it out of their own bank account. So that gets messy, right? Extremely messy. And then you have a board, and then your money is being mixed with that money, and then the organization's money, and then you collect donor information. So if you open your doors, or if you have your organization set up and you have your 501c3 and you've gone through all of these steps, and then I come to you and I say, I'm interested in helping you out and I want to give you money, and it's going to your bank account, that is a red flag. So in that step, it's not stated there, but it's definitely implicit to establish and set up. After you get your FEIN number, establish a bank account specifically for your nonprofit organization. All right, step 6, make it official. So I say make it official because calling yourself a nonprofit or doing charitable work is not the thing that makes you a nonprofit. It's actually not. It's your tax-exempt status. That's the only thing that really identifies you officially as a 501c3. You have to actually specifically put 501c3 because there are a number of different types of nonprofits. So the process of that is called the Form 1023. And in that form, it is going to be so easy for you to fill out this form after going through those steps. These steps are there for a reason. They are put in this order for a reason, and they build on each other, and they make this process a little bit easier. So after you've done all of those things, then you file your Form 1023. You could go online and see a copy of a Form 1023 to kind of see what you're going to need to know. You just type in form or SF 1023. Step 7 is register with your state. Now, the way that people register with their state is going to be a slight bit of variance. You're going to definitely want to check with your state to see how to register. All of these other things that I mentioned are more of a federal registration, but then you also have to take into account the state that you live in. All right, so let's just do a recap. really quick of the steps to starting a nonprofit. So we talked about having your mission statement be clear, concise, and compelling, and making sure that you avoid mission creep. Next step, don't try to go it alone. Establish your team, establish your board. Don't hire or don't get on your team weaker versions of who you are, but get stronger versions of who you are not. That is where the success lies. A lot of times there's a challenge sometimes with that because we see each other's differences and we might see each other's flaws. Like I may know that this person is flawed in this area, and they may know I'm flawed in a particular area. So we have a hard time gelling with them, but it's not really about sameness. It's about compatibility, right? And then after you establish your team, establish rules of conduct and authority. That's basically just establish your bylaws. Again, your state may not require it. IRS doesn't require you to submit one, but you need bylaws. And you also need to check with your state to see if they require you to do bylaws. They may actually require you, but I'm telling you, regardless of whether or not your state requires it, your organization should have bylaws. Trust me on that one. The next one, incorporate your organization through the establishment of articles of incorporation. Step 4, get a social security number for the organization, also known as the Federal Employee Identification Number. I'm going to say the next step would be establish a bank account for the organization. You can do this at this step. Let me say this because this may be something that comes up because I had a client ask me about this. You can establish a bank account for your nonprofit entity before your letter comes back for your 1023 for the 501c3 status. So long as you are able to show the bank that you have filed for your FEIN number, you can go ahead and set up a bank account for that nonprofit organization. They will come back and ask you for your FEIN number once you have that established. Meet with your team to adopt your bylaws, to finalize the articles of incorporation. Make sure everyone understands their roles and responsibilities on this team, that it is a team effort. Establish who's going to do what. That sort of thing is so crucial in the beginning. That's why you don't want to just stay at the friends, family, and whoever you can find stage. You want to go through the different stages and get to the highest stage possible of nonprofit development. The next one is make it official, and that is just completing your 1023 form, and then one of the last of the first few steps in establishing your organization is to file with your states. All right, so that was quite a bit to cover, but I hope it was really, really helpful. I'm going to go ahead and change the title of this broadcast. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get profitable relationships and fiscal sponsorship conversation going because of the technical difficulties that we had, but we are going to definitely reschedule that so that people can get the information that they need. And thank you to everyone who showed up live, and also if you are listening to the replay, thank you again for allowing me to be an instrument in the process. I am here for your success and I want you to win. And until next time, continue to do more, serve more, and be more.